Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this video we are going to learn how to make the old school classic game, Snake. If you've never played Snake before, this is essentially what it looks like. You are a snake, and you go around eating food, and as you eat food, you get bigger. And as you get bigger, the game becomes more difficult, because if you hit yourself, then the game is over, just like that, right? And so we're going to make this game. This actually seems pretty easy, but there's quite a bit of coding involved. But this is going to be somewhat of a medium level project, right? So not as crazy as something more toward the difficult end, but also not as easy as some of the other games we've been making. So I'm going to make a new project called Snake New, because it's new, right? All right. And then let's start thinking about what we need for this project. Well, first thing we're going to need right off the bat is we need some kind of, we need a backdrop. So let's go ahead and just create a new backdrop. Let's say, make it a black backdrop. There we go. So new black backdrop. And we need a snake sprite and we need a food sprite. So let's paint a snake sprite. We'll set this to be green. Nice dark green. Looks good. With no stroke. And if we hold shift while we're creating our rectangle, it'll actually come into be a perfect square. And if we want to make sure it's in the center of its pivot point, so you want to lock it into the center like that. And I'm actually going to shrink it down a bit. Because I really don't want it to be that big. And I want it to be a bit brighter as well. Dark green doesn't look super good. Let's do bright green, because it looks better against the black. And I'm still going to need to shrink it down by about 50. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, and then we need a red, or whatever color you choose, sprite for our food. And I want to make sure that's just a little smaller. Let's make it a little, let's make it about 30, 35. That looks good. It's just a little bit smaller than the snake, right? Okay, perfect. So we have snake and our food. Let's actually rename these. Snake and, ooh, foof, food. All right, let's get our food moving first. Let's get that happening first. So I'm on my red sprite. Now what we want to do is we basically just want this to go to a random position at the start of the game. This is way easier than it may seem. All we have to do is, when the green flag is clicked, we go to random position. It's really that simple. It goes to a random position. Now what we want to do is we want to sense to see if we're touching the snake. Let's do this in a forever block. And we'll say if we are touching the snake, then we want to play a sound effect, which I had in my game. You don't have to do sound effects. I'm actually going to skip it here because it is kind of annoying whenever you're listening to sound effects. But you would actually have play sound effect until done, and then you would pick your sound effect. Again, I'm going to skip it. We would want to change our score, which we haven't set up. Let's set a score variable. Which means we're going to want to actually set that variable to 0 at the top. And then we're going to change it by 1 whenever we touch the snake. And then we just want to go to another random position. So that way, if the snake and the food touch, then it goes to a random position. So see, that's working. And my score is going up every time the snake and the food touch. Okay, so the food is actually done. We don't have to do anything else with the food. That is completely finished. The snake, however, has quite a bit of programming that we need to focus on. Okay, so we need to move our snake in a very not smooth way, right? We don't want our snake to just move smoothly. It's got to kind of inch forward, kind of like the old school game. So we need to trick it into doing that. First, we need a speed. So we're going to create a speed variable. All right. And we're going to set our speed to 0.2. Let's do that. Now we can actually improve the speed at a certain point. We're going to change the speed at a certain point. I'll show you what that means in a second. Now, after we changed our speed, we want a forever block that is going to just constantly move it. And we're going to say we're going to move 20 steps. And then we're going to wait speed seconds, meaning we're going to give it a little bit of a jolt, right? So it's going to move and then wait and then move and then wait, right? And then here's the tricky part. We need to actually create a clone of the snake, okay? The snake's clone is going to be what trails behind it to make the snake longer. So basically, every 20 steps, it's going to create a clone of itself. And then after a certain amount of time, the clone at the end of the trail is going to delete. But as the score goes up, the more snake trails, the more clones we have behind us. So we need to wait even longer every time we collect some food. Hopefully you'll see what I mean here in a second. So let's just go ahead and create a clone of myself. Now, when I start as a clone, I want to do a couple things. One, I want to change to a different costume because we're going to need to check to see, and we need it to be a different color than this green. So let's actually go into the costumes here and let's duplicate, and then we'll click on this guy and we will change the color to something lighter, like maybe a lighter green, like that. So it still looks like the snake, but it's just a lighter green, okay? This is going to come in handy later, promise. All right, so when I start as a clone, I want to switch my costume to costume 2, right? Costume 2. Then I want to wait for a certain number of seconds. Now, that formula that we just talked about, it's going to wait speed plus score seconds, and then it's going to delete itself. Meaning, if the speed is set to 0.2 and the score is 1, it's going to wait for 1.2 seconds and then delete. If the score is set to 7, it's going to wait for 7.2 seconds, then delete. And then we should have 7 or so clones trailing the snake head as it's moving. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's actually set that up. Let's do wait, and then we need an operator here. We need plus. And we are going to do score. Come on. Score plus speed. We can actually turn the speed variable off there. We don't need that. And then I want to delete the clone. Delete this clone. Okay. Beautiful. So now it's going to actually start going. And it's going to delete a clone of it, or it's going to create a clone of itself that gets deleted almost immediately. Okay. Now, it shouldn't have started actually with a clone. Well, let's see. Oh, let's set it to X and Y at first, just so we can see. And it's going kind of fast too. I don't know. We'll adjust it as we go. Okay. Next, let's actually set up the movement. So we can do this as another green flag. And actually, I want this go-to to be inside the movement because it makes more sense. Because it's kind of like a movement thing. All right, now I want forever. I want it to be looking for specific key presses. Now we're going to be looking for 4 different key presses, which means we need 4 if statements. So I'm going to drag 4 of them in here since we're here at this block. And we're going to be looking for if a certain key is pressed. So I'll grab 4 of those. Now, if that key is pressed, then we're going to actually change the direction that it's pointing, right? So we want to point in a certain direction. So we're just going to grab 4. Oh, wrong spot. Here, let's get that out of the way. Nope, that's in the wrong spot. Okay, so if. Good. That goes there. Thank you. Not point towards, point in direction. Okay, so now we need to start thinking about logically what this means. Let's set up the right arrow first. So if we press the right arrow, we want to point in the right direction. So that looks good. If we point in the up arrow, we want to point up. If we point or touch the left arrow key, we want to point in that direction. And if we press the down arrow key, we want to point down. Let's test it out. Oh gosh, hello. Well, eating 1 just created a giant trail. So that's a bug we're going to have to work out. Our variables are going to have to get played around with a little bit, it looks like. That is funny. Oh my gosh. All right. So we're going to have to do something there. Let's try to figure out what that means. Let's see. Maybe if I set my score over here and I do it at the top here. I'm just spitballing here. Let's set the score here first so that it sets when that sprite is created, as opposed to, no, that didn't fix it, but I have an idea. No, I don't have an idea. I'm just looking at my notes here to see if maybe something here is going to make it. All right, I don't know. Let's change the speed. Let's change the speed and see if that is going to help. Maybe speed is, let's try 0.5. Almost. So it looks like changing the speed is what we want. 0.5 is a little slow. Let's try 0.3. So maybe 0.27. You just got to fine tune it. And it's all about the size of your sprites. Not quite. That's way too fast. Let's do... Oh, I went the wrong direction. I needed to make it slower, not faster. So 0.35. Let's try 4. So you just got to fine tune the variables here. Now, mine are going to be different from yours. So almost. So it looks like we're creating 2 for every 1 that we get. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So maybe 0.45. Getting closer. So yeah, you can see what we're doing here. I'm just increasing the variable so that we're deleting sprites, we're deleting clones at the right time so that we only have a certain amount of clones on the screen at a given time. I think it's 5. I think 5 felt right. Ah, 5 is still too much too. 5, 5. You're like, okay, we get it, Mr. Storm. We don't want to see you changing variables all day. Okay, anyway, you get it. So let's see. The last thing we need to do is we need to set it up so that whenever it touches itself, it actually deletes itself. So there's actually an easy way to do this. First, let's go to here to when I start as a clone. And we want to wait a little bit. We don't want to wait. Let's wait half a second. Because this thing is going to create a clone of itself right away. And if it's touching that clone, like if it's automatically going to be looking for that clone, then it's going to stop the game unnecessarily quick, right? All right. So then forever. And we'll say if, and we'll say if touching, oh, actually we want if touching a color. And, oh no. Oh no, oh, come on. I want to pause it when there's a clone. Let's get a couple more clones on the screen. Because I need to be able to grab that clone color. Oh, it's going to make the clone delete whenever I touch it, right? All right, let's swap the costume real quick. And then we'll do the code. Right there. Okay, and then we'll swap the costume back. That's the easy way to do it. So then if we're touching that color, then all we want to do is stop all. That's pretty much it. So basically, we have our game set up. It works. It's not super exciting, right? It's not the most engaging game you're ever going to play, but it's functional. It works. It's a little bit glitchy, but that's kind of the charm of old school video games. Here's one glitch. If we go off the side of the screen, nothing happens. The game just, the snake just keeps going. And if we touch ourselves, then the game is over. That was weird. Okay, so that's about it for Snake. Like I said, that was an intermediate level project. There's not as much coding, but it's more difficult because of the stuff that we have to understand in order to do this correctly. Alrighty, I will see you next term. Have fun.